Good afternoon, one and all, and welcome to the first official PodStance PunkStance podcast, or PodStance Punk. I don't know. There's a lot of P's, a lot of punks, pods, pippity poppity poo. It's kind of hard to judge. I kind of made up the name while I was in the shower, and that's what I've gone with. It's kind of new to me. I'm just imagining like a video in my head of like how I would look, like me sitting on the bed, or doing all these sort of wacky kind of things alongside it. But I don't know. This just seems a bit more suitable. But yeah, welcome everyone. This is the first one of hopefully many. This is an idea I've had for a while now to start my own official podcast about music and sort of a mixture of lifestyle, music, mental health, a bit of everything that because obviously there's a lot going on in my life right now, and music, especially pop punk and a lot of the sort of alternative and sort of all of those releases are really sort of what's keeping me going. And my writing has toned down a bit, obviously, because I'm very busy sorting stuff out in my own life, and I figured what better way to accompany my own personal movements, as it were, than with a podcast that talks about the thing that's really keeping me going, that's sort of the musical endeavours, as it were. So I figured, why not? Let's give it a go. So obviously this one is going to be awful. I imagine the first 20 are probably going to be god awful, but there's no harm in trying. You got to do these things. So it's a big welcome to you all. Thank you for sticking by. For all of you who know the page and the channel I've done before, welcome back. This is a brand new venture, venture or adventure. I don't know. They're both the same word deep down. You just add and add. Thanks, brain. You see what I mean? It's just sort of rambling. Before I used to sort of script these bits and just keep going and utilize the script as best as I can. But now I'm sort of utilizing stream of consciousness rather than sort of predetermined written pieces. So it's going to be different, but it's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. The general idea that I've had, the title is still in the works, as it were, but the general idea is going to be known as the Albums That Saved My Life idea. The thing I've been writing about on the page, I've done a couple of those now. I've taken a bit of a break from that because I thought it was a sort of a bit preachy and wasn't the best method of showing my my evolution, as it were. So I figured the better way to do it would be incorporate it into the podcast feature. So it means that this one will just be me for now, but hopefully we'll get more people in. It could be just some friends, some family, maybe some bands if they're interested. God, still getting used to this. But yeah, if bands are interested in coming in and talking about albums that inspired, like albums that they've made or just their past, then that would be great. And I imagine that a lot of people will be interested in that, because I think music is a vital element in people's lives. Everyone has their go-to songs, their comfort songs. I'm the kind of person that will listen to anything and everything that's sent to me. Even recently I've had a couple of bands reach out talking about new singles or new albums and stuff, and that's great. I love seeing that kind of thing. I love receiving new bits of music and people asking for my opinion, which is weird. Like, I'm not a professional. I'm just some guy in a room who writes about the occasional album from time to time, but it's very gratifying to understand that people like what I have to say, and I figured if they like how I write it, they may as well listen to me while I ramble. So I think it's going to be good. We'll have however many people in. Take some time to get some traction up and running. So it'll probably just be like my flatmate for the next one, or like a couple of friends that come over. But that's the thing. I think a lot of podcasts try and focus on very, very famous people and big bands, and there's some of them get all kind of guests in, which is great. But I want to bring it down a notch. Much like my posts are more sort of tailored towards the smaller bands, I want this little thing to be more for the smaller bands, obviously, but also just people that I know, and maybe even people that I've only just met who want to talk about. I don't know. It's a sort of it's an ongoing project, but I think the main thing is getting people here, talking about their inspiration, talking about why music is so important to their lives, and how it's helped them, and how maybe it hasn't helped them. Maybe they've had some struggles, and music reminds them of that. Maybe there's some past trauma or some issues where music has been involved. It's such a ubiquitous medium that theoretically it could impact any part of your life. And I think that's the main reason that this is so important to me, because music has changed my life. It really has. And I think people who have been following this page for a while will realize that the music has changed a lot for me. And once we get into the main elements of this piece, the sort of introductory piece, you'll see why, which we will get to. But yeah, it's just this is the start of it. I thought I'd do a little cheeky intro to explain what's going on, really. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. We'll see what happens with it. This is obviously just the first test run, as it were, so we'll see what happens. But we'll get right into the main episode, which rather than having a guest is just me talking. So this should be fun. God, this could be a huge mistake, but we'll find out. So I've been meaning to start this podcast for a fair few weeks now. I bought all the kit. I got back into using like my editing softwares and my recording software. And I was looking around and I couldn't find the old microphone that I used to use, like the Rode one that I used to, in my old videos, I used to hang sort of very not very subtly, but quite sort of. It was just in the picture, it was always there. Sometimes some YouTubers can just get it out of shot and it still sound great. I can't do that. I have to have it right in front of me. That's exactly what's happening now when I'm recording this. Like, it's much easier just to have the microphone right in front of me so I can sort of get really close and then be sort of really far away. It's kind of weird how to judge that, I'm again still working it out. But when I was looking for the microphone, I suddenly realised I just had some music on in the background, and there was an old song that came up that I hadn't listened to in a while that had so much influence on me many, many years ago, which was So Typical by Cold Front from their album Float Around. And for those of you who have seen me before and know the kind of stuff I talk about, Cold Front's debut and only full-length album, Float Around, is my favourite album of all time when it came out, and still is now. It's just been a huge influence on a lot of my music. And it popped up just randomly while I was looking for my kit to make this podcast. And so anyway, I couldn't find the microphone in the end and bought a new one, which is the one I'm using now. And I was I set it all up, I had it ready, and just sort of left it for a couple of weeks because I have a full-time job, and anytime I'm not working, I'm sleeping or playing Skyrim or Beat Saber. I recently did get a PSVR 2. I bought it off a friend. I'm looking at it like right now. I'm just such a sweaty man in every sense of the word that I can't see through the little. I don't know how they made this. It's unbelievable technology. But it's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, tangents. That's one thing podcasts are good for. But I was listening to this, and then a few weeks passed, got the microphone, left it for a bit, and literally just before I got home today, as I'm recording this, So Typical was the song that came up on repeat on the Spotify. And I distinctly remember that their album came out in October of 2017. So I looked, and it was the 6th of October of 2017. And at the time of recording, it is 5:30 in the afternoon on the 6th of October 2023. So Cold Front's album is officially 6 years old today, which just baffled me. And I figured, what a better way to start the PodStance PunkStance podcast. That's a mouthful. You really need to think about how you're going to word that. Then talk about the album that started it all off. And I remember exactly the moment that it came into my life, because I was at school. I was still at school in 2017. My roommate's older than me, and he always every time I make points about how old I am, he'll always just do that groan. It's like, you're so young. But I mean, I'm 4 days older than Gladiator the movie. Let's just say that, because I won't give specific dates, but yeah, I'm 4 days older than Gladiator, the UK release for Gladiator. So yeah, there you go. You can figure that one out for yourselves. But I was 17 years old. I was newly into upper sixth. Sorry, I just joined upper sixth. So it was the last year of school. And, it's a busy time. You've got exams out of the ears. Everything's an absolute stress haven once you get there. But we found out there was a little glitch in the school system where you could use Spotify the free Spotify version, but it acted like premium. So you didn't hear any ads. I think it was some school bonus. I never really figured it out, but there was some school bonus that you didn't have to listen to ads when you were listening through all these songs. And this was at the start. This was sort of very early on when I had first had an interest in finding more independent bands and independent music. I'd started my playlist, the really, really long one, the one with the really stupid name that is still very, very long. I can't remember the exact length of it. I think it was a collection of pop/punk/rock/indie songs, all by different artists that I found over time. At the time of recording this, it has 5 likes. Thanks, whoever they are. And 81 hours. 80 hours and 54 minutes. So technically 81 hours of music, all by different bands. I haven't updated this in probably about 3 years, but it's still there. It's still one of the ones I have. I go back to it every once in a while, because it was one that I think I first made it in 2016 and sort of carried on from there. I remember like Free Throw was in there and a couple of other early ones. I think Randy, You're a Liquor. Is that the name of the song? Oh, I'm going to have to look this up now. Sorry, I feel like I should know this. Randy, I Am Liquor. Okay, that was close enough. From their 2017 album. Which one was that one? Bear Your Mind, that was it. When did that come out? Oh, that was in May. Oh, that was earlier. Anyway, so I'd started adding stuff to this playlist and I was looking around and finding all this new music and just exploring, really. You know, I was at this age where I'd been so heavily inspired in the past by different eras of pop punk that I wanted to find these new bands, and Spotify gave you such a range and such an incredible ability to just hunt down these new bands. You know, there's playlists everywhere that are constantly adding new independent groups with, you know, barely any listeners. And it's quite sad, really, because there's so many out there that deserve the attention. And that's exactly why I want to talk about Cold Front today, because they gave up as a band because they couldn't gain enough traction. And after that, I think their Spotify biography still has the release date of Float Around. I'm fairly sure it does. Yeah, it does. New album, Float Around, out now on Equal Vision Records. And that's 6 years old today. Man, how time flies, isn't it? But that's exactly what happened. And Cold Front released their album. It was brilliant. One of the best pop-punk albums of the modern generation. And they disappeared because they couldn't gain enough traction on the album that they released. And that was what spoke to me quite heavily early on, because I figured, you know, this is why something like PunkStance needs to exist, or something that I felt needed to exist, because, you know, the bigger bands can get whatever reviews they want from anywhere they go. You know, every single bit of music medium and every single little pop culture group can talk about it and talk about the big albums that are coming out from the bigger artists. But it's an industry that takes unbelievable amounts of time and, you know, reaps very little rewards if you're just not lucky enough. And it's very upsetting that that's just how it is. And a lot of bands have missed out as a result of just not being able to grab that traction. So when Float Around came out, I was very early into the idea of finding new bands and collecting all these new songs from new bands that I'd never heard of. And there was something about that album that just really, really spoke to me. Like, it's just over 30 minutes long. It's almost exactly 30 minutes long. 10 tracks, so about average. And every single one of them was just, you know, banger after banger after banger. And even now, as much as the other tracks haven't had nearly as much attention, Everything You Want Me to Be, I think it was, is on like 7.5 million listens compared to some of the other ones that haven't even hit 1 million yet. So, you know, they've become more popular now that they don't exist, which is, I guess, what happens to a lot of bands. It's just sad though, isn't it? Like, these things happen, but the reason that Cold Front is so important to me is because it inspired me. It inspired me to find more people like Cold Front, because their album, now 6 years on, still holds up as one of the best modern pop-punk albums I've ever heard. You know, it's concise, it's got unique riffs for every single one of them, and ends on a acoustic ballad that is so emotionally impactful that I can't help but cry every time I listen to it. But it's also that level of nostalgia, because I remember hearing it for the first time and adding it to my one of my playlists about sort of feeling emotion. I believe it was called when I feel like feeling. Very, I am 14 and this is deep, but I kept the name. There's sort of an ironic sake to it now. But Poorly is an incredible song. I mean, we'll get to it at the end. I'll go through all of them individually, but I mean, we started off with So Typical anyway, and that's the one that sort of rockets the opening, as it were. I mean, that one itself it starts off the sort of the themes of relationships and sort of emotional turmoil with different members of your life, because the whole album is about not just relationships in like a sort of boyfriend girlfriend sense, which is a very common trope for pop punk, as we all know, but it delved even deeper into like familial sort of connections, as it were, and almost sort of like the manipulations between people that you're so close to. Everything You Want Me to Be is about someone changing themselves to fit into a relationship that they're not comfortable with, and sort of formulating their life around how to act around this one person. But in the end, there's a realization that they know who they want to be. They are who they already are. And I don't know, there's just so many subtle layers to it that really strike a chord with me. And that's why, obviously it's 6-year anniversary. I don't know if this will actually go out when it is the 6-year anniversary. I'll probably, that's why I keep saying at the time of recording, because this could go out any day. I might never even put it out. I might listen back to it and think, oh, what were you thinking? But yeah, I think when it first came out and I heard it all the way through for the first time, I'd never been impacted by music that much. It was the first time I truly felt like a connection to an album, if that makes sense. Because going way, way back, the thing that got me into all this stuff was like playing Burnout 3. That's a legendary soundtrack, a notorious soundtrack. One that's synonymous with the sort of classic pop punk era. Sugar Cult's Palm Trees and Power Lines was the first album I ever bought, and that was 2004, I think it was. And that they were all around the same time. You had like Autopilot Off and a smattering of others that might come to me at some point. The F Ups, that was another one, wasn't it? That was on that one. It was Jimmy Eat World's Just Tonight from Futures. That's a cracking album as well. That's a great song. There was so many. And then Orpheus as well. The Ash song, the Irish band. They had a new album come out recently as well, I think. Night Ride or Night Sky or something like that. I don't know. We'll get to that if we ever do. But that was what I grew up on. I grew up on this Generation 1 pop punk vibe. Blink were everywhere. Not necessarily in the early 2000s when I was getting around, but like, the influence was still very much there. And Cold Front very much took that original pop punk vibe, mixed in some borderline easycore vibes, some occasional, like, not screams per se, but very guttural vocals, especially in So Typical, and Shut Me Out. That's got a few ones. No, Spit Me Out and Shut Eyes. That was it. No, Shut Eyes and Spit Me Out. I got those two mixed up. Yeah. Just goes to show how well I know the album then, doesn't it? Wow, well done. You do your first thing and like actually try to claim how much you know about this album and you get two of the titles mixed up. Well done. Thanks, Bray. It's just not professional at all. But yeah, I mean, starting with So Typical in terms of that, like that was easily one of the best tracks on the record. I mean, they're all brilliant. It's short, it's sweet, it's heavy, it's got some crack, and that one started off the whole theme of relationships, as I was saying. It's completely about the manipulation of oneself. It's so typical of someone to be like that. You have lines like, as if I'll ever waste my fucking time again. I hear the same 3 fucking lines. She said, I'm taking her for granted and it's pulling you away from me. She doesn't seem the same since she left. I can finally breathe. And it has this, it's just about this freedom from a relationship that's so controlling and so like, just makes you feel so small and almost like trivializing the whole idea of it. And it gives you that level of confidence that you can be exactly who you want to be. No one can stop you. You are your own powerful being, and you can just you can go out. The world is yours, and you can't let people tell you what you can and cannot do and who you can and cannot be. And literally right from the get-go, in the first, 2 minutes, 47 seconds, I think it was, it just throws everything out there. There's no wasting time. And it's absolutely sensational. And it swings right into Natalie, which is a bit more... It's on a similar vibe, but I think it's more of a reminiscing track, talking about racing up those steps to come get you at the door, looking back on all these times you spend with people, Natalie, I presume, and it's a more sort of touching track. It's still got the classic pop punk music tropes to it, but it's more about the honesty behind the kind of relationships you can have. I mean, there's always this thing about specific names of specific people for songs, even though it's, I don't know exactly the history of these bands, if at all. Maybe Natalie wasn't even a person they knew, but it seems to be someone that they knew. But it even starts with, if I could just forget about these walls around my head, then maybe I could start to rearrange the thoughts of me and you. And that automatically has this idea of being trapped again. There's a feeling of being lost as well. Like, drove past your old place and now I'm racing up your steps, so come get the door. And he didn't know how lost he was. Maybe that it's this weird dichotomy of feeling like you can't be yourself around certain people, but at the same time you can't help but be around them. Instead of just moving on, we both cover for it. It's quite an interesting track, actually, because it divulges into both senses of the relationship, both the very, very positive side of wanting to be with someone and just being alongside them. It doesn't really matter what you do, but you feel at home with someone. You feel safe with someone, but at the same time, you feel like you can't be yourself around them, and you're trapped in your own mind about what things are going to happen or what things might not happen, and this level of anxiety that comes from it. And it's surprisingly informative about the kind of relationships that someone in the band has, or the sort of protagonist, as it were, has. Obviously, the main single, Everything You Want Me to Be, comes next, and we kind of described that already about, it's a very similar theme about being controlled and who you can and cannot be in the grand scheme of things. And it's probably the most, in fact, it probably definitely is the most famous song that they've done, but I think that's because it has such a relatable message to it. The title itself is kind of confusing at first when you say it, like Everything You Want Me to Be. It's almost like there's a word missing or a word that needs to be flipped. But then you think about it and you go, oh, wait, no, that's the whole point. Talking about things like you're fake and you slow me down. I barely hear your voice. I tried to give you space. I tried to be alone, then I stopped. It's like there's such a struggle to live knowing you were messed around with. But maybe it's that same thing in Natalie, where it talks about the side of being messed around and having a real hard time, like, figuring out who you are after something like that, but at the same time feeling like you don't want to be anywhere else. And it sets up, these first three tracks set up a very strong thematic purpose for relationships. It starts very firmly on the sort of partner on partner action, for lack of a better phrase, but then slowly goes more into the kind of familial territory. Not straight away though, because It's Hit Me comes next, and that's another similar one. Defensive and evasive. You kept running from the pain, but you left a trail, and I followed it. Again, giving that sense of constantly wanting to be back where you were. But then again, that's why I keep my distance. I don't really care when I'm alone. It doesn't seem to bother me. So you have that first sort of three sections of like, oh yeah, no, I can be on my own, I can do it, I can survive not being with this person. And then literally the lyric straight after is, but then I'll catch a glimpse of your reflection, now I'm falling, now I can't seem to stay awake. It's so good to see a strong thematic presence, because a lot of pop punk albums, as much as they have like an underlying message to all of it, I think some of them do lack the ability to keep a cohesive narrative. It's quite hard to do that, not every band can do it. I mean, even Float Around has a bit of a struggle with it at times for certain songs, but generally the whole pattern of relationships and struggling with people, really. Everyone is different. Everyone has moments when they struggle, be it on their own or with another person, and I think it doesn't it doesn't get looked at as subtly as it does in this. I think a lot of bands have done it very well, but there's a very blatant mental health theme, if that makes sense. Like it's not a subtle element of it. It's a very poignant part of the record, which is not a bad thing if it's established well. But for this, for Float Around, it has this sort of initial, like, Float Around in itself is quite a vague term, and when you look at the album art with the stereo head man or whatever, I don't know, it's an amazing one. It's amazing art, and I've still got that drawing of it somewhere that I did years and years ago when it came out. I wouldn't have done a drawing of it if I didn't like it. It's also just a really cool design. Like, I think there's got to be some Radiohead influence in there. How on the nose it is, I'm not sure, but there's definitely something there. Anyway, Float Around gives this major theme of, I don't know, it almost sounds quite dainty in a way. It seems quite positive. You know, when you float around, you know, you sort of, you know, it can come across as maybe you're, you know, up in the air or just sort of, you know, floating through life or whatever. But it's not really about that. I mean, Float Around, which we'll get to, the title track, has a lot more to it than just what I've stated before. But that's why I love it. There's so much underlying stuff going on with it, you know. Again, underlying stuff. I haven't exactly planned the whole thing, but this is just, you know, this is the ramble that I've chosen to go on. Following that is track number 5, which is Shut Eyes, and this one takes an interesting turn into more of like a look back into the past, not like a sort of an existing problem, but more looking back into the issues of something that you were already in, rather than struggling now. You know, this is sort of like a sort of past look, looking back in a relationship that was quite troublesome and quite a bit of an issue, but not understanding what you were in at the time. You know, with Shut Eyes, I see everything. It's almost like this ironic, oxymoronic term in that, you know, maybe before, you, even with your eyes open, you couldn't see exactly what you were going through, but now you've closed your eyes and thought about it, you realize, oh wait, I was going through some serious shit. I think the most poignant line for this one is I think it comes a couple of times, but it's the one right at the end that really stuck with me, which said, "Nobody wants to be the one who falls apart. I'm thinking maybe it might be me." And it's the protagonist almost taking ownership of their own issue. You know, I think a lot of people, myself included, I mean, I'm terrible with this. It's just like owning up to the fact that either something's wrong or you've cocked up. Obviously, nobody wants to be the person that's done something wrong, but everyone does it. Everyone does something wrong. Everyone makes mistakes, and I think it's important to take ownership for that. You know, it took me a while. It still does. You know, everything that I've done, all the things that I've messed up on, which is a lot, a lot of things. I am nowhere near perfect. Generally, I'm very good at making mistakes and just not being truthful about stuff. It's been such a struggle for me because I don't like lying to people, but sometimes it feels like it's the only defense I have for something that I've done so wrong. And Shut Eyes was an important one to me at the time because when I was younger, I used to be pathological in my lies. There was a story I used to tell my parents when I came out of an English class, saying that I saw a fire extinguisher that was on fire, and we were talking about we were talking about irony or something, or, you know, juxtaposition of images or something. And I went home and I went, "Guess you'll never guess what I saw today." And they were like, "Oh, what was that?" I was like, "I saw a fire extinguisher that was on fire." And they went, "No, you didn't." This is not what happened. And I didn't back down. I was like, "Yeah, I did. I definitely saw it. Like, it was. I know exactly where it was." And I was just making it up because I wanted to, like, I don't know. I wanted them to be interested in my day because I never thought that they were. So I used to, like, make things up to see if they would be interested and, you know, call me out on it. And Shut Eyes is important to me like that because at the time that was a very big struggle for me. And, like, looking back now, you know, with Shut Eyes, I see everything. I know exactly what happened. I know the kind of person that I was, and I was being fucking stupid. Like, why would I need to do that? Obviously, I didn't see that. And it's just, I don't know. It always reminds me of just the past. I always hear it. It's not a song that's going too deep into anything. It just talks about, stubbornness never got me anywhere, and it's just talking about your issues. Another lyric took the time to patch the holes in our ceiling, maybe talk this through. Did you want to? It's about fixing yourself and becoming a better person and looking back and seeing the mistakes you made. And that's why that song is just so poignant, especially now, compared to some of the other songs. A lot of the songs are about being in a relationship that's tough and doesn't define who you are. But this song is so relevant to every single person for multiple things in their life. Everyone fucks up. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone does it. But it's important to understand where you can learn from those mistakes and what you can do about it. If you shut your eyes, think about it, suddenly everything becomes clear and everything suddenly makes sense. I didn't realise that Shut Eyes would be the one I talk about the most, but I'll keep going into it. Due to the kind of stuff that's been going on in my life, as I talked about in some of my Albums That Saved My Life posts, I've had a lot of trouble recently with alcohol and some behaviours that I've been bringing out that I'm really not proud of, and I'm slowly patching things up as I do with friends and people I care about, and it's songs like these that remind me that there's always a chance, there's always hope for things to go back to the way they were. I've stopped drinking now. I started therapy on Monday. The Monday here, not the Monday of whenever this goes out, but the Monday of this week, 2nd of October or something. And I've been meaning to do this for years and just never had the courage to. Never felt that it was right for me. Never felt like I was even worth it. I was worth someone else's time. Looking back now, even in literally just the last few weeks of me thinking, no, I don't need therapy. I don't need to help myself. I don't need to stop drinking. Looking back now, I was so fucking stubborn to even think that I didn't need help. Everyone will get help if they just ask for it, but it's showing that willingness that makes it more of a struggle. I think a lot of people think therapy is like this sign of weakness and, oh, you need someone else to help you. It's like, it's not even that. It's just, it helps piece things together and it helps you understand who you were and who you are now. I'm only 23. I've got a lot of life ahead of me and a lot of learning to do. And there's no better time than now to do that, just to make things better. All I want to do now, having started therapy and doing my journals and doing stuff like this is I want to make the world a better place. I want to make my life a better life. I want to be good to the people that I'm around, and I want them to be good to me. And that's so important. And it's songs like this that make me think that in 5 years' time, I can look back on myself and think, what the fuck was I doing? Like, what was I thinking? Oh, sorry, there's a plastic bag under my desk. I need to move that. Can you tell I planned for this? But yeah, it's so important to remember that there are people out there who want to help you and are qualified to help you, because music can only do so much. But Cold Front inspired me to not only find new music for me to enjoy and for other people to enjoy, but it inspires me to be a better person. It inspires me to involve myself in people's lives in a more integral way, in a more positive way. Because I've done some bad things, I've done some horrible things to a lot of people I care about, and that's not the legacy I want to leave. And I think the fact that music, especially pop punk music, can inspire me to be a better person and just a more inspiring individual, then I see no reason why I should stop. I see no reason why I should stop listening to albums like this if they give off a generally positive aura. And I think it's great. I think it's done a lot for so many people, which hopefully we'll get to in the future when people come in and talk about it. But yeah, that was Shut Eyes. That was a very long tangent, but I guess that's what the podcast is all about, just going off on fun tangents. And the fact that this is just me speaking on my own is a bit weird. There's no one in the room. My door's open. I'm expecting my roommate to get back any second now. People just come in and go like, what the hell are you doing? What have you been saying? Or maybe just listens into everything I've been talking about and then goes, well, that was weird. Yeah, fun times. I'll try and keep this more concise now, but we are talking about my favourite song on the album now, which is Slip, which is a song I have had on repeat and just in my life for so long now that I'm so excited to properly talk about it. Not only has it got the main guitar solo of the album, which in itself is brilliant, and I've learnt it now on guitar, and it's such a fun song to play. You know, it's got a great rhythm guitar riff. It's got a great solo, and also it's again, it has a bit more of a positive feel to it, especially with, you know, it talks about scars and the kind of people that can cause these issues, but it's really a story about redemption and how you can be on your own. You know, it's like you wanted to be something, then you quit, said all the right things then, but you slipped because I know the answers and I don't have to be here. You know, that's such a strong message about individuality, isn't it? Like, because I know the answers and I don't have to be here. That's not even, there's no questioning about it. If you said that to someone in an argument, you know, they're like, what the fuck are you doing? It's like, because I know the answers and I don't have to be here, and you just piss off. Like, imagine that. That's such a strong, such a stern message to give to someone. But that's what's great about this song, because much like some of the others, it's got a very positive feel to it, but has a very strong underlying message about hopefulness and understanding yourself. I think all of these songs have a level of understanding who you are. Be yourself, you know, in a relationship, not in a relationship, good relationship with your parents or friends or your siblings. It's not about that. It's about you. It's about knowing who you are and what you want. And there's so many albums out there. There's so much music out there. You know, I just focus on pop punk and punk music and rock music and whatever. And even in that alone, there's, you know, an absolute plethora of music to listen to. Everyone's dying for your attention. But I think as much as you can hear some great riffs and some great tunes, which is always fun, it's the messages that the songs leave that really resonate with you. And Slip is just like that. I'll just pick myself back up and just laugh it off. Just one slip doesn't mean that it's all over. It's not about, if you fall over, you think, you know, if a baby is learning to walk and then it falls down, it doesn't just sort of sit there and go, well, living's kind of not for me, and just gives up. You have to get back up. You have to. And if you see it in a positive way, get right back up and just dust it off, then, you know, nothing can hurt you. Nothing can penetrate the skin, the sort of strong exterior that you have. And it's such a great message. I love it. It's got a great tune. It's always coming back into my regular listening just because of how good it is and how good it makes me feel. Every time I hear it, every time I do something wrong or just do something silly and upset people or whatever, the song always comes back at just the right time and reminds me that things are all right. You know, don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. In the grand scheme of things, just look after yourself and things will be better. You can't calm the storm. You can calm yourself, and then the storm will pass, and eventually things will be okay. If you take one slip, doesn't mean you're on the floor forever, does it? And then we get to the main one, the big boy, the title track, the eponymous track, which starts in the first line with the word crying. So you can tell that this is going to be a heavy one, and it really is. Float Around not only has an incredible riff, a very unique riff that's it sounds initially like quite emotional, quite powerful, and then it gets into the big sort of quintessential pop punk chorus, but it talks about someone, it's like about the idea of lingering. When I was talking about Float Around before, it's initially gave me this idea of like floating around the room, hot air balloon, you know, just sort of being in the air, that general sense of being in the air. And it never was that. The line itself is, and as you float around my head, casting doubts on what I said. Float Around was actually being projected onto someone else, not the protagonist that we're thinking about, or ourselves, or the band, or whoever it could be. It's being projected onto someone else. And the thing floating around is the person's opinion or that person in general. And that's painful, to have someone be in your head rent-free that you never asked for. That's harsh. That's hard. I've had that a lot. You're desperate to remove them. You're desperate to get it out of your head, and you just can't. You just can't. And it's all about these people that just aren't right for each other, but can't remove each other from their lives. I think the entire chorus sort of, so if we're both done crying, don't you talk to me again, because our rooms are flooded and we can't sleep in a place like this. Like, that's some tough writing. That's heartbreaking, thinking about the fact that you just can't be around each other. The amount of tears that you're causing each other, the amount of pain you're causing each other, but you're still trying things and trying to make it work. And if we're stuck inside it, you can't keep holding on to me. We're just two different people. That's the line that really stuck with me at the end. We're just two different people digging the same hole. Like, imagine that. How bleak is that? Just, you're both stuck. You're both stuck. And ideally, you can't help each other. You're in the same position. It's an incredible song that simply talks about not being able to let things go. And I'm a big believer in forgiveness. I don't have time to be resentful of people. I don't have time to be angry. So I just forgive. And just go, yep, that happened. It's all right, mate. Don't worry about it. Some people aren't out like that, unfortunately. But, that's their choice to have literally nothing better to do than think about stuff that's bothered them. And that's what this song is about. We're just two different people digging the same hole. We're just two different beings who can't get out of each other's lives and don't have a choice. That's where the subtle image of individuality comes in. Because as much as this song is talking about the fact that you can't, deep down everyone knows that they can. Everyone can live their own life. Everyone can get out of that hole eventually. It's just how much work you put in to get out of it. These things are tough, but not impossible. The only people that think it impossible are the people that have never tried. And that's why, again, every single one of these songs has stuck with me for a very long time, but Float Around, you get this, when you first see the album, you get this initial conception of what it could mean. And I was not even close when I first saw it. You see all these bright colours and this sort of interesting character on the front of the album, and you go, oh, Float Around, it might be really positive and fun. And then you realise it's the fact that literally people can't get out of your head. You can't, there are thoughts that damage you. There are thoughts that you can't remove because they're so ingrained into your mind that they'll never leave. That's hard. And for a pop punk album, that's brutal. It's tough, but that's why I love it. That's why it's so good for me and so memorable. And why I've remembered it for so long. 6 years on, Float Around is still around. Not the best way of phrasing that, but ho-hum. The next one after that, Spit Me Out, the one that I couldn't remember the name of or got confused with Shut Eyes. Another one that's a bit more in your face, so chew me up and smile when you spit me out. Very much the sort of idea of being manipulated by someone else. That one is a bit more to the point. So you can drag me in and pull me closer and let me drown again, face to face. I want to hear it from you. This is the thing. It's very much an album about manipulation within relationships, which isn't new. I want to specify that I'm not praising this album for being groundbreaking in its writing or groundbreaking in its music, because it's not. It's a pop punk album. It's something that a lot of people have heard countless times before. That's fine. A lot of people might hear this and go, yeah, that was fine, or not even like it. But everyone has that album that sticks with them. Everyone has a song that sticks with them. That's what PunkStance is all about. It's about people appreciating the music that they love. And that's why I go for the smaller bands, because they do it out of love. They make their music out of love. And that's all you can ask for, really. But Spit Me Out, yeah, it's got another incredible riff, a pretty decent solo in the middle as well. Not kind of sort of slip level, but definitely a decent one in there. Some very complex and competent guitar playing. And it's also one of the heavier songs as well. It's got the vocal-wise is a bit more guttural, a bit like so typical at the beginning, but it's very, I describe it as a very cathartic song because it has a very blatant message about being manipulated and thrown about and spat out, quite literally. And there's not as much surface level stuff in this one. I mean, most of the lyrics sort of speak for themselves, to be honest. I found all the words to say. I think I found all the words to tell you. I think I figured you out. I found a way to save face. I think I'm heading for something special. There's not much underlying stuff going on there, but it's interesting, and I think that's the main thing. The penultimate one, Blame Me, again, has this sort of general theme of being the one at fault, being the one manipulated and taking all the blame for it. This one is very short. I think it's just only just over 2 minutes. But again, it's very cathartic. Just coming after Spit Me Out as well. It's got a lot of very blatant themes. Some of the lyrics like, I bet you haven't changed one bit. Another drunk night, stuck alone with your thoughts. You were the weight that held me back, but you can blame me if you want to. It's that realization, again, of having someone that was in your life and not good for you, and then you having that individuality and that willpower to just split away and do your own thing. It's very powerful. It's very powerful stuff, especially, when it comes to the end of the album and you realize you've only got a couple of tracks left. You wonder what more they can say about it, and they still find ways. They still have that little bit of edge that really brings it all home for me. But then they take it one step further at the end with arguably one of the most emotional pop punk songs I've ever heard, which is Poorly, which I mentioned quite earlier on, which is about, I can't remember the exact band member's name, but it was about one of their mums, probably called Paulie, I imagine, who died. I'm not sure of what. It's not my place, it's not my business, but it's basically about knowing that your mum will never see you growing up. I love my mum, I love my parents, I'm very close with my family, and this song broke me quite early on when I heard it. And I think right at the end is the main part that really, the last line, which divulges away a bit from the usual chorus or the usual sort of recurring line ending, going, well, now I cry because you're not home. The man you made, you'll never know. And that ripped me apart when I was younger, thinking about how you know, when you're younger, you don't realize you're not just watching yourself grow up, you're watching your parents grow up as well. And, my dad's retired now. Both of them are, looking to move into that next step of their lives because all their sons are in their 20s. I've got two brothers. One of them's moved out. One of them's, I think, 22 in a few days now. I am the middle one, yeah. And, they're looking to move on with their lives. They're not responsible for us anymore. They have their own lives. And it's just imagining them not being around. That is hard to imagine. Thinking about just the kind of pain that the writer of this, I don't know the name of the people in the band, unfortunately, but just thinking about what they were thinking when they wrote this. All these memories of their mum, all these memories of things that you can remember of them. And the recurring line in the song is, "Call me a stubborn son." And it repeats multiple times, and it's hard to tell when you listen to it if they had a good relationship, like the mum and the protagonist. But there's such an honest tone to the whole album and to the whole song that Paulie ends it perfectly. I know having an acoustic song at the end is sort of like the quintessential ubiquitous way to end a pop punk album, and that's fine, go for it, do what you want. But just thinking about how it's such a touching and honest song, one of the most touching that I've ever heard. And if you don't listen to the album, I thoroughly suggest you listen to Paulie, the final song, just because it's incredible and it's so heartwarming. Because I know that my mum's still around and hopefully will be for a long time, and I love her a lot. I care about her a lot. I care about both my parents a lot, obviously. But this song always reminds me of her, and it will always make me think of her, just because I realise there are some people that aren't as lucky as I am, and that they don't have theirs around. And it makes me think, and it takes me all the way back to what I said about just being a good person, being a better person, that, my family won't be around forever. and I want to spend as much time as I can with them and prove to them that I'm the very son that they know they've already brought up. They want to see me succeed. They want to see me thrive, and I want to do that for them just as much as I want to do it for me. And it's very, very impactful. So if you are listening to this, Mum, and Dad for that matter, you'll probably listen to it together if you do. I love you very much. You might listen to the song straight afterwards when you hear this, but yeah, I'm doing this now, so that's fun. But I don't get to say it enough to you guys. You know, I always want to tell you how much you've done for me. You've done more than I can ever give back to you. And this is literally for no one else now who's listening. This is literally just for my parents now. I mean, whoever's still listening anyway, you've made it a long way. I think I'm 58 minutes into recording now or something like that. I'll probably edit this down. I don't really know what I'm going to do yet, but I've just been... oh my God, I've been rambling for an hour? Holy shit. How did I do that? How did I do that? Jesus Christ. I need to get out more. Wow, I've actually surprised myself. But yeah, no, Mum and Dad, I love you both so much, and every time I hear this song, it makes me think of you, Mum. Much in the same way that every time you hear... it's a Ricky Martin song, isn't it? I think I was born to a Ricky Martin song. Not Careless Whisper. It's a George Michael one. Oh my God, what the hell is that song? It's from his 99 album. Private Emotion. That was it. I had to look it up. When I was born, my mum was listening. Well, Private Emotion was around the time I was born. But if you really want to know, Poorly by Cold Front is the song that makes me think of you. Every single time, without fail. Because it's about someone who doesn't have someone as beautiful and as incredible as you. And I don't know what I'd do without you. And Dad, for that matter, both of you. I'm sorry, Dad, I would have a song that's about you, but this one just inadvertently happens to be about someone's mum. So I am sorry. If the album had a song about their dad, then I would have talked about it. But in fact, that'd be quite... This is sort of like the mum version of 1970 something by Neck Deep. Listen to that one. That's a very similar story. And it's very, very touching. That's a great song as well. I'll have to do a whole Neck Deep thing as well, because they have their new song has really put me through. It Won't Be Like This Forever. That was the name of the song. I couldn't remember it. I was trying to remember how many words were in it. But yeah, I think that's covered most of it. I mean, Cold Front, they've had an influence on my life for now 6 years, which is a bloody long time. I was 17 back then. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know I'd be where I am now. And that's with shut eyes, I see everything now. I can look back and see, 6 years ago, just exactly what I was doing. It's crazy how over 6 years this album is still with me, and my opinions about it have not changed. If anything, I love it more. I care about it more because of just how influential it has been on my life. And it's always the album I go to. If I'm feeling down, if I'm feeling upset, if I'm feeling just numb about anything, or even if I'm feeling good, anytime I'm feeling something, it'll always be there, and it'll always have a place in my life and in my heart. And it's such a shame. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, they're never going to make any more music, but at the same time, I kind of don't want them to, because I'll always have this album, and nothing can take it away from me, and that's brilliant. Frankly, I couldn't ask for anything more than to have this album in my life forever. Frankly, it's very, very exciting. Anyway. Now there you go. That's one of the albums that saved my life. And the bags ruined it. Lovely. But yeah, whoever's still here, thank you very much. I don't know how I ended up rambling for an hour. That's actually quite worrying. I don't know how I'm going to change this into something. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed listening to this first one. The next ones will have other people talking rather than just me, so don't worry. I won't ramble on as long as I usually do. But there will be future episodes. I know a lot of people, I think the vast majority of these things sort of go to about 5 or 6 and then never make anything else. I'm hoping it won't be like that, purely because this has been quite fun, to be honest, just chatting. I don't know who will actually listen to it or who will be interested, but I mean, I might have to listen to this back just to cut all the bits out. That's fine. I don't mind doing that. I've been kind of used to. I think I'm kind of used to seeing my face and listening to my voice now, just because I've done so much YouTube shit back in the day. Maybe I'll get back to that. Who knows? I don't know. But this is my main focus for now. But thank you all very much for listening. This is the first of many, hopefully. Go listen to Cold Front's album. It's officially 6 years old today. What was I doing when I was 6? I think I was eating Lego, to be honest. Or maybe cat food. I don't know what I was doing. I was like, what was it, year 1? I think I went to the aquarium, London Aquarium, for the first time. I don't know what I was doing when I was 6. I was a 6-year-old. I was like whacking myself in the head with a broomstick, like Tom and Jerry, to see if it would hurt, and eating stuff out of the cat bowl or whatever. I don't know what I did when I was 6. But Cold Front is officially that years old. Cold Front is now eating Lego off the floor, if it was a child. Sorry, I'm rambling now. But yeah, Lego, it's an incredible album, and it's done so much for me, and thank you, Cold Front, for making something so brilliant that has stuck with me for so long. You have no idea how much it means to me. But yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. I'll hopefully have someone to join me for all of it, instead of just me talking, just rambling at you, to be honest. But that's part of the fun, isn't it? But there'll be more to it next time. We'll see who we can get in, and yeah, stay awesome, everyone. This has been the first PodStance Podcast. There you go, I said it right that time. I can keep the name.